Hey, Derek, guess what?
Hit me with it.
We just got a promotion with Audible.
Audible, fantastic. I love Audible.
Do you know what the cool thing about this deal is?
What's that?
If our listeners go to audibletrial.com/supercinemapod, they get a free trial with Audible. And do you know what they get with that?
What do they get with that? Tell me.
They get one free audiobook of their choice, and they get 2 free Audible originals, which is special content that Audible makes available free for all its subscribers.
Are you kidding me? That deal is so good, I may go myself and sign them.
Do you think they let you keep the books after you're done?
No, you're not going to tell me they let you keep the books after you're done.
Yes. In fact, you can go sign up for a trial, and you can cancel before the trial ends, and you get to keep the books you've already downloaded.
Well, I don't see how you can beat that with a stick.
Exactly, yeah. And you can, lots of great books, especially for fans of the show. You can listen to Super Gods by Grant Morrison, which is all about like how the superhero comics have changed and evolved over time. Or you can check out Marvel Comics, The Untold Story.
Which is a terrific book. I have that both in hardcover, and I listen to that on Audible myself in my car while traveling back and forth.
And there's also another similar book that's called Slugfest, which is about like the wars between Marvel and DC Comics.
Oh, okay.
So that's another one you got to check out too. So yeah, head on over to audibletrial.com/supercinemapod and start your free trial right now. You get 1 free audiobook and 2 free Audible originals, and you can keep them even if you cancel before it's over.
Nerds, geeks, sweaties. Look how far we've come. We rule the world. But it wasn't always this way. Let's go back to a time when there was no comic book cinematic universe, when you had to wait 3 years to get a superhero movie. Back to a time when Batman used a credit card. This is a film about a superhero movie that didn't get made. In 1998, a movie called Superman Lives was in production. It was going to be directed by Tim Burton and star Nicolas Cage as Superman. I've been fascinated with this since I first heard about it. From the concept design to the various scripts to the people involved, this would have been the most craziest cosmic Superman movie ever made.
Welcome to the Superhero Cinephiles podcast. I am half your host, Perry Constantine.
And I'm the other half, Derek Ferguson, coming at you live or semi-live from Brooklyn, New York.
Live on tape, as they say on Stephen Colbert's show.
How you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. I was about to ask you the same thing. It's getting chilly out here, and I'm fighting off a bit of a cold, but you can probably hear my voice a little bit. I'm a little bit stuffed up right now, but hopefully we're nearing the end of it. Just hit me like 2 days ago.
Okay. Well,
but otherwise, I'm doing okay. How about you?
I'm doing all right. As I was telling you earlier, we're getting hit with a snowstorm here now in Brooklyn. So they're calling it a nor'easter. That's what they're calling it. Any way you look at it, it's snow coming down, and I got to shovel that shit later on. So
God, yeah.
That's the bottom line. But other than that, I'm doing fine. I'm just, hanging out, staying in the house. Matter of fact, we're doing the documentary today. I have been on kind of like a documentary kick. I watched like 3 or 4 documentaries in the last 2-3 days.
It's funny you say that. I must be something in the air, because I've been kind of on a documentary kick myself too. I was watching a bunch of different stuff over the past few weeks.
Yeah, I watched a documentary about Pauline Kael. Mm-hmm. Who was like the most influential movie critic of the last half of the 20th century. And what else did I watch? Watch something about doomsday preppers. People who get ready for doomsday, stuff like I don't know. It's just like, I started watching one documentary and it just led me to another one and another one and another one.
Yeah, I go through those periods too where I just start like binging on a bunch of like one type of show or something. I do it a lot with podcasts too. Like I'll just get interested in the topic and I'll look like lots of different podcasts that are around that topic. But lately we started, it was like 2 days ago, we started watching Breaking Bad because my wife's never seen it. And we're just looking through Netflix and I saw it on there. I'm like, oh, well, let's see what she thinks of it. So we put on the first, she's addicted. Like we're like at the end of the second season last night, and I was getting tired. I was falling asleep. I'm like, I'm gonna go to bed. She's like, you mind if I stay up and watch some more? I'm like, go ahead. I've seen it like twice already. So So yeah, she stayed up. I don't know how much she watched after I went to bed, but she's still asleep now, so that might be an indication.
It's funny that you mentioned that because we started watching this other show with Bryan Cranston called Your Honor. That just started on Showtime. And he plays a judge whose son accidentally runs over like a mafia guy or something like that. So now he's trying to like cover up the crime so his son doesn't go to jail. And Patricia's watching it. She said, "Oh, how come he only plays these parts where he's, an unlikable guy?" And I said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "He was in a comedy for years, Malcolm in the Middle." But she'd never seen that. She only knows him from Seinfeld because he was on Seinfeld.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he was. Well, he wasn't like a regular character, but he was a recurring character on Seinfeld. He played a dentist, Tim Watley.
Oh, yeah, I remember him now.
Yeah.
The whole anti-dentite storyline.
Right. Right. He was the dentist that switched to Judaism, and Jerry was convinced he only did that so he could tell Jewish jokes.
Right. Yeah, I remember that now.
So now Patricia watched this. So now she's interested now in seeing Breaking Bad. And I tried to get her to watch it years ago. She said, I don't want to say that. But now she wants to see it. So serendipity there.
Yeah, interesting. So we're both on documentary kicks. Our wives are on Breaking Bad kicks.
How do you feel about documentaries in general?
It depends on the subject matter, really. For a long time, I really didn't have any interest. Right. I'm just like, if I want to watch a movie, I want to watch something that's, I want to watch a story. But over the past, I don't know, maybe it's like in the past, like maybe 10, 15 years, I started getting more interested in them. But mostly it depends on the subject matter. Like if it's something that I'm curious about, then I'll watch it. It's very unlikely for me to watch a documentary about something that I've got no prior interest in, though. Right.
Yeah. It's same thing with me. Like I could like, as far as documentaries go, I could take them or leave them. But then like, once I started watching Turner Classic Movies, really, and they would have like, like these all night marathons of certain documentaries on certain subjects. Right. And then I started watching them. I said, oh, wow, some of these are really, pretty good. And so I kind of got hooked on document, and it's a nice way I find to cleanse the palate too, the movie watching palate. To watch something different.
I think for me, it's really with the streaming services because now they're all there. It's readily accessible. So I think that's when I started getting more interested in them because before it's like I'm not really interested in going to a movie theater to see a documentary. Like if I'm going to go to a movie theater, I want to see something that's got action in it, that's got spectacle. I want something that's worth my $10.
Yeah, that's an excellent point because I could never see myself like paying to go see a documentary.
But I went to see Fahrenheit 9/11. I saw that in the theater. But that was kind of a special case because that was a huge movie that was coming out at the time. But most documentaries, like you're not going to get me to pay money to go see it in the theater.
Yeah. And like you said, with the streaming services, like I watched that one on Netflix, the one that everybody's talking about now, the one about the internet, was that the Social Dilemma. Social Dilemma, yeah. I haven't seen that yet, but I want to check that that's
out.
Excellent. Yeah. Watch that. That's really good.
I also got to finish watching the Fear City, the New York and the Mafia one.
Oh, you watching that? That's good.
I'm like 3 episodes in so far. I got to get back into that one.
Yeah. Well, I tell everybody, and I've been telling everybody that, go back and watch that if you want to. That's like the origin story of Donald Trump and Rudy Giuliani.
Yeah.
That's like the origin story. And I said that to people because I always tell people, listen, they were always crazy and racist. They just didn't start it. And if you watch that, you look at that, you say, okay, now I understand why. And there's another documentary. I can't think of the name right now, but I'm going to give it to you. I'm going to find it and send it to you. But it's a documentary about Roy Cohn.
Oh, I didn't. Maybe not that one, but he was heavily featured in the Trump family documentary that Netflix did.
Yeah. Because you hear Donald Trump all the time. He was talking about, where's my Roy Cohn? Where's my Roy Cohn? Yeah. Well, if you watch this documentary that I'm talking about, you'll understand a lot why Donald Trump is the way he is. Because that was like his mentor.
Yeah.
So I watched that and I said, oh, shit, okay. It gave me a new insight into why he acts.
Yeah. I know a little bit about Roy Cohn. Now, you want to talk about crooked motherfuckers. That's a guy who pretty much defined crooked motherfucker.
Yeah. And I watched the movie version of the play Angels in America, in which he's a character played by Al Pacino. Plays him. And I said, oh, yeah, well, they must have exaggerated this. I mean, for the movie. No, you go back and you do your research into Roy Cohn, you realize, no, they didn't exaggerate a damn thing. That's who he was.
There's this really good podcast I've been listening to, just brief digression. It's called Behind the Bastards. And it goes into like all these like little stories about like these really terrible people throughout history. Like, for example, like Hitler was, had a terrible case of flatulence. and that's one of the reasons why he became a vegetarian, was because he was farting all the damn time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and it's just like all these really weird stories you find out about, just like all these really interesting stories about these really terrible people, about like how Stalin was, it was insane. And they kind of depict this a little bit if you saw The Death of Stalin. But he'd take his men out, like his inner circle, and they'd start drinking at like 5 o'clock in the morning. They'd be just like going nonstop. And he had this weird obsession with practical jokes, like with people sitting on tomatoes and shit like that. And then at like 2 a.m, like it'd be like constantly like, try to outdrink Stalin. Because if you had to keep up with him. And it's like by 2 a.m, his guys, they're all like about ready to die. And he's like, let's watch a cowboy movie. And it was just like, and all of this stuff. And you see this in the opening scenes. Have you seen Death of Stalin?
No, I haven't.
Oh, it's really good. But in the opening scenes, you see this whole thing play out. And I had just finished listening to the Behind the Bastards episode on Stalin before I saw this. And it's all true. Like, this is shit that actually happened. You think it's something that's made up for this movie, but no, it actually happened.
Yeah, stuff that you swear, oh, yeah, okay, well, that can't be true. You find out it did actually happen. Yeah, it did actually happen. One more documentary I could recommend, and then I guess we'll get down to actually doing some work. What was that? The Last Wolf, which is a documentary about the writer called Edward Wagner.
Oh, okay.
The fantasy writer, science fiction writer, horror writer.
No, I'd never heard of him before.
Yeah, it's on Vimeo.
Okay.
If you're interested. Yeah, but I watched that. When did I watch that? I watched that yesterday. Because Carl Edward Wagner, he wrote a whole mess of books about a swordsman called Cain, who was like, he's immortal and he wanders the earth, and he's kind of like an anti-hero. He makes Elric look positively cheerful. That's how So that's another documentary I could recommend if anybody is interested. So yeah, that's all I've been doing like the last 3 or 4 days. Yeah, you started me off with, of course, with the movie we're talking about today.
So before we get into that, though, there's been a bunch of news that dropped this past week.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, the biggest thing is, Marvel Studios made a bunch of announcements.
Oh yeah.
I mean, well, first off,
talk about dropping the bomb on me.
My God, they just they dropped the fat man and the little boy. But Mo, they had first off, they started off the week with dropping all these trailers for the Disney Plus series. So they had a new trailer for WandaVision. They had a full trailer for Falcon and Winter Soldier. They had a full trailer for Loki. They had a trailer for What If, and it's just so. I mean, that's a good place to start, is those trailers. So what did you think?
I saw Loki. Well, of course, when I saw that he's in the hands of the Time Variance Agency from the Fantastic, I lost my mind. I said, holy shit, which of course would be natural since he apparently is messing with time because he's got the Tesseract from the past. So he's not exactly the Loki that we know from because the Loki that we know died in what was that?
Infinity War. Yeah.
Yeah, he died, but Loki's still around. So and it looked like they got Loki turns out to be DB Cooper at one point or something. So Loki looks like it's going to be nothing but fun. I don't know if I'm looking forward to. Okay, first the one I was looking forward to the most was, of course, WandaVision. But now I don't know if I'm looking forward more to the Falcon, Winter Soldier, or Loki.
So when these were first announced, Falcon and Winter Soldier was the one I was most looking forward to. And then they released the trailers for WandaVision. I'm like, oh, now I think I'm really looking forward to this. Because WandaVision was the one I was kind of like least interested in. But, seeing all the things they're doing, and it looks like they got Monica Rambeau's in it. They had Darcy, we see her back in the trailer, back from the Thor movies.
Yeah.
And just like everything we've heard about it, and it looks like a total. Oh, Jimmy Woo, played by Randall Park, he's going to be back in it too. And it just looks like a total mind trip, and it looks like it's going to be so amazing.
And what else they got coming? They have Hawkeye coming. They got She-Hulk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll talk. I got some news about that too, but also then we see Falcon and Winter Soldier, and now I'm really hyped again for that because we see. I like seeing you got this kind of banter between. I'm glad they kept that relationship between Sam and Bucky, where they got this kind of like antagonistic friendship type thing.
It's very much, to me, is going to be the Falcon and Winter Soldier. They're going to be like the MCU's. That's like the Lethal Weapon.
I was going to say the exact same thing.
That was the vibe. That was very much the vibe I was getting from it. A Lethal Weapon vibe.
Yeah, I was thinking the exact same thing, and I was watching it, and I'm all in for that. They got Batroc coming back. They got apparently they're going to involve the Flag Smasher in it too.
All I have to say is that they're going to make it very hard for me to leave my house. Mm-hmm. And then on top of that, of course, I'm in the Star Wars. They announced all that Star Wars stuff.
I haven't really dug into those yet, but I saw a few key takeaways from that. Like,
oh my God! I said, well, you know what? I forget about it. I'm just not leaving the house. That's all. Yeah. Really, seriously.
Yeah.
There's no reason for me to ever leave my house now.
Also, in the Loki trailer, there are a few little things that I noticed that kind of stood out to me. I mean, one. There's this one scene where it shows. Did it look like Black Widows appeared in that trailer?
It looked to me like she was sitting on that planet.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah,
to me that looked a lot like the Black Widow.
Yeah, and then also he calls out to Thor and Heimdall in that one scene too. So there's rumors that maybe Idris Elba will be coming back.
Yeah, well, you know what? He's got the Tesseract now.
Mm-hmm.
So he can bounce around time and space as he wishes. So who's to say that he's not going around and I don't know how the Time Variance Authority is going to play into it, but I'm
headed up by Owen Wilson too.
Yeah, Owen Wilson, who,
Mobius and Mobius, that's who he's playing.
Yeah, Mobius and Mobius. Yeah, that's the guy who's like the supreme bureaucrat of that agency. I did not know that was him until I read it online somewhere.
Really?
I said, I know that guy. I said, but I can't think of who it is. And I said, his voice was driving me crazy. Because I said, I know that voice. But it was the spiky blonde hair.
Yeah, like the gray hair.
Yeah, and he's got like a fuller face.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they gave him some facial. I think this is the first time I've ever seen him with facial hair at all.
Yeah, he didn't look like himself at all. I'm just hoping that since this involves time in some way, that maybe this will be a way for them to bring the Black Widow back.
Maybe, yeah. We'll see how it all works, or maybe they'll just have like a cameo or something like that. But it seemed like a weird thing to put in the trailer if it's not going to be Black Widow.
Yeah, it's a weird thing to me. And like you said, with Idris Elba coming back and everything, I'm really kind of hoping that maybe Loki will be trying to bring Asgard back as well.
That would be interesting.
That might factor into it, that, he finds out that he really does miss as much as he claims he couldn't stand them, that he misses them, and he's trying to bring them back. But you know what? I am content to wait and see what happens. Marvel hasn't let me down yet, so I'm sure that whatever they got it planned in mind, it's going to work out.
And did you see the trailer for the What If animated series?
Oh my God,
that looks great. I loved What If. Like that was it was just such a fun book back in the day.
It was it was what I loved. It was totally batshit insane. What if no idea was too wild or crazy?
Yeah.
If you wanted to if you imagined it, okay, put it in What If. Just throw it in there,
That was one of those books that I'm really disappointed that they've never really brought back in a big way. Like they've come back and they've done a few limited runs of it, but back in the day, I keep eyeing Comixology because I'm waiting for those complete What If collections to come down in price.
And What If had a really long run too.
Yeah, I went through like 3 volumes or something like that.
Yeah.
And I think it was finally canceled in the late 90s, early 2000s when it was finally canceled.
It ran for a long time.
And they've had they've touched back on it a few times. Like they've done like a few what if specials since then.
And it was the type of book that I didn't buy it on a regular basis, but if I walked by it and said, and I saw on the cover, what if Daredevil was Spider-Man? And I said, holy shit, I got to read that. And I would pick, and I would pick it just based on whatever the premise of that issue was.
I remember there was one I saw that was just completely ridiculous. It was like, what if the Punisher became Captain America? I'm like, what? I got to see that.
Yeah. And of course, it had the Watcher, who is one of my favorite Marvel characters. I love the Watcher. So since he was out there, spinning all these stories, I said, okay, cool. Marvel will find a place for somebody and anybody to star in,
And the MCU is a great way to do that. Like they've got, it looks like the first episode is going to be what if, what's her name? Haley Atwell's character, Peggy Carter.
Peggy Carter, yeah.
What if she got the super soldier serum?
That's what, she becomes like Captain Britain or something like that.
Yeah. And then they're also going to have one like with what if T'Challa ended up becoming Star-Lord?
I'm really hoping that they get her. I would hope that they got her back to do the voice.
Oh, they did, yeah. I'm pretty sure it's Haley Atwell and Chris Evans both did the voices for that one.
Because one of the greatest sins in recent memory is that Agent Carter got canceled. That's a show that should still be running today.
Oh, hell yeah.
That was one of the best things they ever did, Agent Carter.
Yeah. So what if, I'm all here for that. And there's just, we got, over 10 years now of MCU movies. There's so much material you can explore with that just within the MCU.
Yeah. And I mean, it's animated. I mean, so, it's not dependent on anybody's schedule or they don't have to fly anybody. If they can just take somebody and stick them in a booth to record their voice and everything like that, bam, they can do it.
Yeah.
So it can run indefinitely.
So some other stuff we got coming out here is there are 3 new TV series coming. We got Secret Invasion, we got Ironheart, and we got Armor Wars. Now, Secret Invasion is a really interesting one because, in the comics, that was this big crossover event, right? But it's obviously you're not going to be able to do that. It's going to be very different. And it looks like it's more based on what we saw at the end of Spider-Man Far From Home, where you've got Nick Fury working with Ben Mendelsohn's character from Captain Marvel, the Skrull character.
Yeah, that's what it looks like. This is the one. Okay, I think that this is probably the Nick Fury series we've been promising that they've been promising us for a while.
Yeah,
because I see, first image I saw associated with this was Sam Jackson and Nick Fury, and I said, okay, well, if he's in it, well, I'm down.
Yeah, that's what, and this seems like such a better idea for that concept for Secret Invasion. Skrulls secretly infiltrating the government and all that. Having Nick Fury being the one to go after, that's such a better concept for it than what they did in the comics, where it was just a big crossover event.
Yeah, it was just a bunch of spandex.
Right, yeah. And
this actually has a plot behind it as Secret Invasion. Okay, this is it. It's the Skrulls.
Yeah. And so I'm loving that idea. And, Sam Jackson and Ben Mendelsohn being in there, that's going to be a lot of fun. Also, Armor Wars. So this is the perfect follow up to Tony dying, because Tony Stark's dead now, and so it's open season on all his Iron Man technology. And so you've got Don Cheadle starring in this one, and which leads to some people speculating that maybe he'll end up becoming Iron Man at the end of it. I don't know how. I mean, I think that's mostly just speculation. I think they'll probably keep him War Machine. But
I think he's going to stay War Machine. I can see them having a new Iron Man, but I don't think that Don Cheadle is going to be it.
Yeah.
I don't think
so. Our Armor Wars, great classic 1987 Iron Man story. And that's apparently going to lead into Ironheart, which is the young character who they're going to. I just saw her name. Oh, Dominique Thorne. That's she's going to be playing Riri Williams, who she creates her own Iron Man suit. This is off the comic books. Brian Bendis created this character, so it's like a female Iron Man, basically.
Yeah.
So that's going to be another series they're launching on there. That looks like a lot of fun. So that's those are the new TV shows, and they also said that with She-Hulk, they're going to get Tim Roth and Mark Ruffalo are both going to be appearing in it.
Yeah, from the little bit I read about it, that apparently is going to be heavily influenced by when John Byrne was on it.
Oh, okay.
Treated it like a sitcom. Mm-hmm. And She-Hulk, she broke the fourth wall and she would talk to, so that's pretty much how they're going to handle it, which, if you want to set it apart from all the other MCU series, that's a good way to go. Do it like a little bit more, with a little bit more comedy and stuff like that. Do it like a lawyer show, but the lawyer, she's 7 foot tall, green, and super strong.
Yeah. I think that's a great one. And I'm glad we're going to see Tim Roth coming back as the Abomination.
Yeah, because he just got captured at the end of, the Incredible Hulk. He didn't die. So so now this is a good way for us to catch up on what's been going on with him since the end of that movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we also got so Christian Bale's officially going to be in Thor: Love and Thunder. He's going to be playing Gore the God Butcher, which is from Jason Aaron's run on the character. Okay. They're also bringing back Sif.
Yeah,
Jamie Alexander's coming back to play Sif,
which kind of surprised me because I had heard rumors back when Disney Plus first started up, but I guess the plans didn't work out for whatever, that they were considering giving Sif her own series.
I think that may still be in the works.
Huh?
There may be. I read something. There may still be some talks about something like that happening.
Yeah,
because she may also appear in Loki as well. Okay.
Yeah. Well, listen. As long as Sif shows up somewhere, anywhere, I don't care. As long as she shows up.
Yeah, I'm really glad she's gonna be coming back in.
Yeah.
Big news too. We're finally gonna get. Marvel's finally announced they're gonna be doing a Fantastic Four film directed by John Watts, who did the MCU Spider-Man films.
Third time's a charm.
Fourth time technically.
Well, fourth time, yeah. Wow, fourth time's a charm, yeah. Although actually, I'm kind of in the minority that I didn't care too much for the first one, but I kind of like Rise of the Silver Surfer. I'm sorry. A lot of people hated that one. I kind of like that one. Matter of fact, I liked it better than the first one. I've only seen the first one like maybe 2 or 3 times, but the second one I watched like 4. And if it comes on now, I say, "Oh shit, Rise of the Silver Surfer," and I watch it. So, but yeah, I mean, listen, as long as they get John Krasinski to play Mr. Fantastic, I'm down.
I was gonna say, like, that's the fan casting everyone's hoping for. John Krasinski is Mr. Fantastic, and Emily Blunt is Sue Storm.
And you know what? I like John Krasinski, but I didn't really see him at it until I saw like one of these fan things that they did where he's in costume, the Fantastic Four uniform, with the white temples, and I said, "Oh, okay, now I can see it."
Yeah, especially the bearded Reed, like
bearded one, right? Yeah. I said, "Okay, now I can see it." Yeah,
and they're also getting Ant-Man and the Wasp. It's got a title, the third movie in the Ant-Man series, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. It's called.
Yeah, which will be introducing Kang the Conqueror.
Kang the Conqueror, played by Jonathan Majors. We got a new actress playing Cassie Lang. Now it's Catherine Newton, who was just in the Freaky, the horror / comedy movie that just came out with Vince Vaughn.
Okay,
that was from the director of Happy Death Day, which is really good.
Oh man, I love that movie. Who does that? Me and Tom DJ went to see that.
Oh,
Happy Death Day 2.
We saw that. Yeah, we saw that. Happy Death Day to You. Yeah, we saw that one too.
It was Happy Death Day and Happy Death Day to You. I was honestly surprised how much I enjoyed those movies. Those movies were a hell of a lot of fun.
They got a comic book connection too. You know who wrote the Happy Death Day?
Who?
Scott Lobdell.
Really?
Yeah. Okay. I was surprised. We're watching it, and at the end, it says written by. Scott Lobdell wrote that.
Yeah, I was really surprised at how much I enjoyed them movies. They were, it was totally different from any slasher movie that I thought. And then when they brought in that science fiction element in the second one, it was totally unexpected. But you know what? They made that shit work, though.
Yeah,
I was hooked. Yeah. Oh wow, okay, yeah, it was really good. Folks, if you haven't seen it, once you finish listening to us, of course, go find. It may be on Amazon Prime. Go watch Happy Death Day and Happy Death Day to You.
Yeah. We talked before about you were a fan of Disney Afternoon as well.
Yeah.
So they're doing a new version of Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers.
Chip and Dale.
It's gonna be a hybrid live action / animated feature with John Mulaney playing Chip and Andy Samberg as Dale.
Oh, okay. All right.
And
I wouldn't say I'm rabid fans of theirs, but it's Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers, so I'm going with it.
Looks like a Green Hornet movie. They're doing a reboot, and they got David Koepp, who wrote the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies and also Jurassic Park.
And I hope that they pull this one off, if for no other reason that I can stop hearing the whining about the Seth Rogen.
Oh, that's never going to stop.
Oh my God, that movie. How long ago did they make that movie?
I don't even know.
Yeah, and you know what? You have people going on and on about it, like the movie tried to shank their grandmother in the shower. I mean, please.
Yeah,
life's too short.
Yeah, I'm really tired of people just whining about that. I mean, a lot of it gets thrown at Seth Rogen. So I know people who are like, oh, whenever Seth Rogen's name gets mentioned, like, oh no, Seth Rogen, he ruined Green Hornet. I'm like, well, he didn't write the damn thing. He was just acting in it.
Yeah, I mean, and listen, I admit it. When they started singing Gangsta's Paradise, when they was in the bike, I laughed. I'm sorry, I did. Because it was unexpected. I laughed. Could it have been a better movie? Yes, it could have been a better movie. But I don't think that they deliberately set out to shit on the legacy of Green Hornet. I don't think they do that. But again, I will say that I do feel sorry for the fans of the Green Hornet, because everybody deserves to see their favorite hero depicted the way they want to on screen. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. Maybe this time they'll get it right. The Green Hornet is actually one of those characters that I think that would work better if they put it back on TV.
Oh, I think so too.
The other TV, I mean, we've talked about this before, which is why I think a lot of these MCU characters work better on the small screen, that not every character has to have a $200 million summer blockbuster movie.
Exactly, yeah.
Some of them work better, on the small screen, 8 to 10, 12 episodes, okay, like The Mandalorian. The Mandalorian works much better as a TV show than it ever would as a movie.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
I've had some people say, oh, they should have just did a movie. No. It wouldn't have worked as a movie.
Yeah, it has to be done as a TV show. I agree.
Yeah, it would not have worked as a movie. Yeah.
You got the Avengers, the Justice League, they work as like these big spectacle blockbuster movies. But a lot of these other superheroes, I mean, you got to remember, they originated in serial storytelling formats. Like, a perfect example is Spider-Man. I think Spider-Man works much better in a serial format than he does on a big screen.
Yeah.
Daredevil as well. Yeah. I mean, the Netflix show proved that brilliantly.
Yeah. Daredevil did not click until they did it as a TV show.
Mm-hmm. And the X-Men. I think the X-Men would work much better on TV. Like you do 12 episode seasons on Disney Plus or something like that. I think that would work much better, because then you can get into all the soap opera dynamics. And that's really what made those Spider-Man and X-Men, the soap opera dynamics are really what made them so appealing.
Yeah. I mean, Stan Lee was brilliant in that when he wrote Marvel comic books. Okay, when he wrote those characters back in the day, all he did was just take the elements from daytime soap operas and applied them to writing comic book characters. That's what he did. Because if you look at those early Spider-Man things where it was the love triangle between him and Gwen Stacy and Betty Brant and everything, well, that's pure soap opera.
Oh, yeah.
That's all that is. And him worrying if Aunt May is going to pass away, is going to die. And that was all taken from, it was like Stan Lee watched All My Children and Days of Our Lives and said, okay, now let me go write Spider-Man and Daredevil.
Right, yeah. And the X-Men was the exact same thing, right? They did the exact. It was all about soap opera stuff and who's hooking up with who, and all these different power dynamics, all these different stuff. And it's hard to pull that off in a movie franchise,
right? Because if you're putting all of this money into it, you got to go with the spectacle because you're saying, well, that's what the people are paying to see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's what you put in. But unfortunately, something has to suffer. And many times, as we're going to see, even with the movie we're talking about now, the story and characterization is the first thing to go.
Yeah. Yeah.
If they got a choice between story and characterization and spectacle wins out every time.
Now, speaking of Stan Lee, there's apparently a screenplay floating around out there about a biopic about Stan Lee and Jack Kirby in the early days of Marvel called Excelsior.
Oh, okay.
And it was voted on the Blacklist. It was like one of the top 20 screenplays of the year voted on by the Blacklist. Like, whether this leads to something or not, who knows? But I think, this would be the perfect time to do like a Marvel biopic about the founders of Marvel.
I think so too. I don't know. There was a book a few years back about Marvel, the founder.
The Untold Story, right?
Yeah, Marvel the Untold Story. That would be great. Disney Plus really ought to do that as a miniseries. I would love to see that. Like as an 8-part series where they talk about the early days of Marvel, and because apparently who was it that was writing Doctor Strange? He actually was getting high on LSD.
Is that Steve Ditko?
Steve Ditko. Yeah.
Well, I mean, you look at those things he drew back then, you can understand why.
Yeah. So, and all of the dynamics that's going. And what I liked about the book, that it was actually the people that was there that was telling the story. Mm-hmm. One thing that really ticks me off is when I read things online, like in these comic book groups and everything like that, and people are talking about what went on between Stan Lee and Jack Kirby as if they were in the room.
Yeah.
When it that shit really pisses me off. You weren't there. How do you know what I heard this and this was said. Well, you heard.
Yeah, exactly.
You heard. You don't know. And it was a different age when they talk about, Stan Lee ripped them off and he robbed them and he did this and he did that and he did the other. First of all, it was a different time. Mm-hmm. It's not like Stan said, you know what, I'm going to deliberately take credit for everything these guys do and screw them out of money.
Yeah.
This is how business was done back then. Whether you like it or not, really, it doesn't really matter because that's how things were done.
Yeah.
There was no such thing as, what am I thinking of? The creator owned.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There was no such thing as that back then. If you created a character for Marvel or DC, well, then Marvel or DC owned it. End of story.
Yeah, it was just kind of the way things were done, which is, terrible, but it is just the way things were done back then.
And see, this is what I try to explain to people, and they say, well, that's no excuse. That's the way. I'm not saying it was an excuse.
Just explain. Exactly.
Saying.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is that you have to look at it in the context of the time in which it happened. That's just the way things were done. Thankfully, It's not the way things are done now. Thank God we've evolved and it's changed. But you want to look at what happened 50, 60 years ago through the prism of how you see things today. Mm-hmm. And that's just not going to work.
Yeah. Yeah.
End of whatever that was. I don't know.
So one final bit of news. Apparently, Zack Snyder has said that he expects his Justice League cut to get an R rating, which includes Batman dropping the F-bomb, which I just kind of like, why? That's the thing. I just don't understand why.
The most juvenile thing that I can think of is that you would think that I, as an adult fan of superheroes and comic books, would be more excited to see this movie just to hear Batman drop the F-bomb. Mm-hmm. You see, you're insulting my intelligence now.
Yeah.
If you think that that's going to make me wet my shorts and get me all, now I really got to see this movie. No. To me, that's insulting.
It is, yeah. And I saw some people on, of course, Snyder fanboys like, oh, this is going to be so awesome. I'm like, why?
Why? Well, okay. Now, finally, folks, I know you've been waiting a while. Even in the documentary, John Peters says that he wanted to have Michael Keaton in the Batman movie say, I'm Batman motherfucker.
Yeah.
Because he says, because I know that would have got the kids. Mm-hmm. The kids would have loved that. Oh, really? That's the only reason why you wanted to put it in there?
Yeah.
Okay. I see. Say no more. Okay. Yeah. See, right there, that tells me where your mentality is at.
Yeah. Okay. So that's a perfect transition, because now we can talk about this movie, which is our first documentary pick, and that is The Death of Superman Lives: What Happened. And this was directed by I'm probably going to mispronounce his name.
Well, I'll let you mess it up.
Yeah, let me bring it up.
So he don't come.
John Schnapp.
Well, you're in Japan, so he can't come looking for you.
Actually, I think he passed away. Actually.
Oh my God! Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, he passed away fairly recently.
I retract my thought.
No, I mean, it was 2018. He passed away, and it was just this came out in 2015, so just a few years after this came out.
Okay. Sorry to hear that, because judging by this, the guy was really good as a documentary. Yeah, no, this is one of the best documentaries I've ever seen, because for two reasons. There's a lot of information that we get. Mm-hmm. And I like documentaries where they interview people who were actually there and was doing the thing, so that they can tell us themselves, this is what happened.
Yeah.
And then, let me make up my mind, because we do see that at one point, like John Peters and Kevin Smith apparently remember some things differently. But I like being able to hear what he's got to say and what he's got to say, and let me make up my own mind about it.
They did a really good. I love that, where they cross cut between both of those different versions, because Kevin Smith's been talking about this for years. He's he's been going on the road, and we talked look up on YouTube Kevin Smith Superman Lives, or Kevin Smith John Peters, whatever, or An Evening with Kevin Smith. Like it's hysterical. It's
he does. He got a whole stand-up routine, and it's like 20-30 minutes he does in that movie, and he's just talking about that. And like I mentioned before, this is like on the level of Richard Pryor type of humor, where he's talking about, because it's hilarious the way he recounts it. And some of it he gets in here. And like you said, I like how they cut back and forth. Like they'll say with John Peters, well, I don't remember saying that. Now, mind you, he never says flat out. He didn't say it. He just says, well, I don't remember saying that. And then they cut to Kevin Smith and say, oh, yeah, he said that shit. He's got the hands going, oh, yeah, he said that shit. So, as a matter of fact, I would go so far to say is that once Kevin Smith, leaves this movie, because he figures pretty heavily in the first half where they talk about the script and everything like that. But once they get out of that, the movie does lose a little bit of energy in it, because we don't have him, throwing his shit in there.
Yeah, the best part of the movie is definitely the first part when they're talking about the pre-production stage and and after that, it becomes interesting. It's not as fun, but it's interesting after that.
Yes, it is.
So for those of you who don't know, Superman Lives was Warner Brothers' attempt in the mid-90s, to reboot the Superman franchise, or reinvigorate it. It wasn't going to be necessarily a straight-up reboot. It was going to be more kind of like a half reboot. I guess it kind of like Incredible Hulk did, I think.
A reimagining.
Yeah, it was going to kind of like what the Incredible Hulk ended up doing, where it wasn't like a retelling of the origin story, but it just kind of picked up again. And it was kind of half reboot, half
reboot, half sequel.
Right. Yeah.
It's kind of fuzzy exactly what it was exactly supposed to be. Me, I'm saying, looking at everything that Tim Burton had planned for it and everything like that, I think they should have just went with just full blown reboot, because, this thing, just from, all of the pre-production work that they did and the drawings and the concepts that they had, this was a whole new way of looking at Superman in his world.
Yeah. So, so the story starts. It's basically Kevin Smith was brought in to talk to Warner Brothers about it. And they're off because his script was going around for Chasing Amy at the time. And so they brought him in to do rework. He'd done some work on Good Will Hunting as well. He'd done some writing work on that as well. Mm-hmm. So he got invited in to have a talk with them, and they were talking about a few different projects, and they mentioned Superman. And he's like, "Oh, I'd love to do Superman." And they said, "Okay, well, you gotta, give us a treatment, and then go talk to John Peters." They give him the treatment, and they like the treatment. He goes to meet John Peters, and John Peters had said that, you and me, we get Superman because we're from the streets.
John Peters is funny. John Peters is a funny guy. I tell you, John Peters is a funny guy. And you know what I love about John Peters? And I do. I love because you know what? I don't get the feeling there's a malicious bone in this guy's body.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's just that he just doesn't get Superman.
Yeah.
That's all it is. And the people that they got to work on this project seem to have been divided between the people that knew Superman inside and out and the people that had no fucking idea what Superman was.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's really weird. You had these people that say, okay, well, yeah, this is Superman. He's from Krypton. Blah, 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 blah. And you had these other people say, I don't get it. What? Just by the fact that John Peters says, I don't get why he has a fly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Really? That's like the most basic thing about Superman. Well, why does he fly?
Mm-hmm.
Well, he just flies, dude. You know, why does Aquaman breathe water? We don't worry about shit like that, you know. Mm-hmm. But yeah, and he says it with a straight face.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't want him to wear the costume. What do you mean you don't want him to wear the costume? How do we know he's Superman? It gets more bizarre the more you hear him talk, but there's also a sincerity in what he's saying. And there's one thing that he says that I kind of like, which makes me says, okay, well, this guy really didn't mean to fuck up Superman. He just didn't get it. When he says, yeah, well, people talk and they say that I'm very energetic and I'm very passionate and everything like that. He said, well, you know what? A lot of times that's the only way to get a lot of people working on the movie to do what they're supposed to do and get the money for the movie. And when he said that, I said, oh, okay. Now I understand why he's the way he is.
Well, you know, you watch him on screen when he's talking about like when they told him that they were going to shut down production and just like how pissed off he got about it. And it's like, he really believed in this project.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like he was really sincere in thinking like this was the way you have to do Superman. And I don't understand why he thought that's the only way you had to do Superman, but you can see that he really believed it.
Yeah. And, you know, as a creative person, this was his creative vision of Superman, which is just as valid as yours or mine. Mm-hmm. Really. I mean, strictly from a creative standpoint, we may not have liked it. And like we were saying, you know, okay, this movie would have been a train wreck, but I would have paid money to see this train wreck. I really would have.
After watching this documentary, I kept thinking like, this is the perfect way to sum it. Like this would have been the best, worst movie of all time. I
think so too. I think so too. Because when you know what, and when you look at Cage, when he's doing, you know, like the costume fitting and everything like that, and there's a good picture of him in the suit, and you look at him and you say, you know something, he might have pulled this shit off.
Well, you know, it's interesting that they chose Nicolas Cage because Cage is this interesting mix of those two extremes you mentioned, where you said you got the people who like the comic books and you got the people who want to do something completely different. Cage is like this weird mix of the two. Right, because where he really, I mean, he does understand the comic books. He's a comic book fan. He named his son Kal-El for fuck's sake. So he understands the comics. He knows the comics inside and out. But then he's also got this desire to really twist it and change it and do something new with it. So it's this weird melding of those two, and I think would have been really interesting to see.
Yeah, like I like they have a part where, excuse me, he's trying to get a handle on Clark Kent. And he's got the Mickey Mouse T-shirt and he's got the baggy jacket and and I'm looking at him and it's interesting because we hear him talk in the background. He's talking to Tim Burton about how he's putting Clark Kent together. And I'm saying, okay, well, you know something? He's thinking about this. He's not just doing it because I can always tell when Nick Cage is being lazy.
Oh, yeah.
When he's being lazy, he does Elvis. You know. But he's not doing Elvis when he's trying to get a handle on Clark Kent and his personality and his character and how he, you know, sees the world and how I said, okay, there's an actor at work here, honestly trying to put together a character. Yeah. That he feels he can portray with honesty on the screen. And I have to respect that. I do. Much as I may think he was miscast or whatever, he wasn't half-assing this thing. He was taking it seriously. Yeah.
Tim Burton as well. Like I was really surprised at how invested Tim Burton was in this. I mean, and it is really interesting when you hear him talk about how, you know, I had always done these movies because everybody expected, like, you know, when you're going to get Tim Burton Superman, you're going to get like, you know, a dark gothic version of Superman. And then you hear him talking about it, he's like, no, I didn't want to do that. I did want to do something that was, you know, bright and more in the light. And you think about what he did after this. Like, he ended up doing Big Fish and stuff like that. And you're like, well, you know what? After seeing Big Fish and like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory and all these other movies that were, these not really dark as far as visually, but very bright type of movies, it would have been interesting to see like what he would have done, took that kind of approach with Superman.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's different because it's Tim Burton. But let's face it, you don't hire Tim Burton to work on any movie unless you want Tim Burton. It's just it's not like hiring. Okay, and I don't mean to disparage the guy. Just use him as an example, folks. It's not like if you hire Brett Ratner. Mm-hmm. Brett Ratner, you're hiring to make a movie, and you tell him how to make a movie. He'll do it just the way you want it done.
Right.
No problem, no issue.
It'll be on schedule and under budget.
No problem. No, no backstage gossip, no fighting with the actors, anything like that is going to get done. But you hired Tim Burton, you hiring the whole package. Mm-hmm. You're hiring a vision. Presumably that's what you're hiring for. You don't hire Tim Burton and then tell him, okay, well, you can't make this movie.
And they had some other interesting casting choices. Like, one of the things I thought was really interesting when they were talking about Christopher Walken as Brainiac.
Oh, yeah.
That, I think that would have been an amazing choice, especially because they were also thinking about Kevin Spacey as Lex Luthor and having the two of them interacting on screen.
Yeah, which goes to show you how far back, people have been thinking about Kevin Spacey as Lex Luthor.
Yeah. And he eventually ended up playing him in Superman Returns, but they were talking about it, back in '95 when this movie was in production.
And how cool would it have been? Because I think that if they had gotten her to play Lois Lane, she would have blown every other Lois Lane that we know out of the water. Sandra Bullock, yes. That would have been an amazing choice as well. Yeah. Now that much as I love Margot Kidder, I feel Sandra Bullock would have made me forget her. Yeah.
Especially you look at her in the movie that really stands out in my memory when I think about her as Lois Lane is A Time to Kill.
Yeah.
Like her in A Time to Kill, like that's basically Lois Lane.
That's Lois Lane, exactly. Yeah. Yep. You're right. You nailed it. Yeah.
And seeing her as Lois Lane, that would have been amazing. That would have been really good to see. And also, this would have been the first time we saw a superhero crossover because they were going to have Kevin Smith wrote Batman into the script.
Yeah.
And
he talks about the scene during the funeral of Superman, where Batman apparently takes over all of the TV screens in Metropolis to deliver, some kind of sermon, a message of hope to the citizens of Metropolis. Although, I don't know, Batman's kind of like the last person in the world you might, but hey, if I was writing it would have been Wonder Woman. But hey, I didn't write it. But hearing Kevin Smith talk about the whole process that he went through of writing it and everything like that is something that I feel that everybody who dreams of writing a screenplay in Hollywood, they should really watch Kevin Smith talk about it. Because when he talks about when he says he gets a phone call, they tell him, well, you got to go the next day and you got to, read the screenplay for John. And he says, oh, you mean give it to him? He said, no, you got to read it to him. He doesn't read screenplays. He said, what the fuck? He said, you shitting me? He said, should I tuck him in too? It's hilarious. And he goes to John Peters' house and John Peters lays down and he reads the screenplay to him. Now, this is why I found that so interesting. Because again, we get an insight into John Peters. Never once in this documentary did I, and I watched it twice to make sure I know what I'm talking about. I never heard him refer at any point to story or characterization. It was all about the visuals with him.
It was, yeah.
That's all he knows is visual. Because and you know what? I admire the man for, he says, oh, I don't read. He said, no, I don't read screenplays. He does, because he's not interested in anything except the visuals.
Yeah.
That's it. And because Kevin Smith says he was reading at one point, going to the Fortress of Solitude, and the first thing is, okay, well, we got to have a fight. And that's the thing with him. Okay, well, we got to have a fight here. We got to have a fight here. We got to, nothing about story, nothing about characterization. It's all about, well, we got to have a fight. Or we got to have, like a big visual. I want the skull ship. That's That's all I know. I just want the skull. Yeah, and I said, okay, that's the way his mind works.
Well, it all ties back to like his 3 big rules that he had for Kevin Smith, right? He said like Superman can't fly, he can't wear the costume, and he has to fight a giant spider in the 3rd act. And here's when I knew, watching this documentary, here's when I knew John Peters was full of shit. Because he said, it was a Thanagarian snare beast. And I'm like, that's a Thanagarian, that's a thing from the comic books. Yeah. Only a comic book fan would have thought to name it a Thanagarian snare beast.
Right.
John Peters did not come up with that. That was Kevin Smith.
No, you're right. That was Kevin Smith. Yeah. Kevin Smith came up with that. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, when he said that, it was a Thanagarian snare beast, I wasn't talking about a spider. No, you were talking about a spider. Kevin Smith.
You were talking about a spider. And what cracks me up is that when he's talking about the spider, and Kevin Smith says, well, why a giant spider? He says, well, don't you know that spiders are the most dangerous predators on the planet? The same thing he says about the polar bears later on when he wants polar bears to fight Brainiac at the Fortress of Solitude. And Kevin Smith says, well, why would Superman have polar bears guarding the Fortress of Solitude?
Because at first he's like, well, Brainiac goes to the fortress. He's looking for shouldn't he have like some guards there? And he's like, well, it's Superman. He doesn't really need guards. And then when and Kevin Smith says and then I went to Lorenzo and I told him about it. He's like, why would Superman have guards?
Right. Even that dude. It's the Fortress of Solitude. It's called that for a reason. But he has the polar bears, and he attributes the same things to the the polar bears are the most dangerous predators. I said, oh man, please, John, just say you got to think about spiders. Because at one point they've been talking about some of the pre-production work, and Superman is in the subways for some reason, and he's he's fighting giant spiders in the subways for some reason. Don't ask me why.
And it's.
The dude just got to think about spiders.
It's funny then he ends up making Wild Wild West, where Kenneth Branagh ends up getting a giant spider body.
And Bill's a giant spider.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
So yeah.
And
I don't know why he just doesn't go do Spider-Man.
It's also really weird that you're talking about the visual thing and like the writing process. Like he keeps calling up Smith with all these weird ideas. Right? He's like, oh, so, the Star Wars movies are out now. He's like, we need Chewie in the movies. Like, you want me to just write Chewbacca into the Superman movie? He's like, no, we got to give Brainiac like a sidekick, a little pet dog or something, an alien pet dog. Mm-hmm. And it's like, and then, and when he saw Chasing Amy, he's like, you know what? I really liked, I can't remember the guy's name, the guy who played the black guy in Chasing Amy.
Go ahead, it'll come to me.
Dwight, I think it was Dwight Ewell or something like that. I can't remember exactly.
Something like that. Yeah.
But anyway, he says it's like, and he's gay black guy. He's like, I want that guy's voice in the movie. And he's like, so what? And he's like, yeah, give Brainiac a robot sidekick and use that guy's voice. Like, you want Brainiac's sidekick to be to have the voice of a gay black man.
Yeah, it's just like all of the, John Peters' mind just seems to latch onto things from pop culture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that he doesn't really understand why they work. All they know is that they work, and he wants them to work in his movie, even if it doesn't necessarily fit the tone of his movie.
Yeah,
that's the closest way that I can. One of the things that they did say in there, that they had mentioned that I kind of like, they were going to have a robot that is kind of like Elron from the comic books.
That was what they were going to name him. They were going to name him Elron. Yeah.
No, they were going to name him. Yeah, and that was going to accompany Superman from Earth, and he was going to be like his guide and his mentor and stuff like that. And then he was actually going to become the restorative suit that brings him back to life and everything like that. That concept I actually kind of like. And there was a lot of concepts that they had in this movie that I actually kind of dug. And I'm nodding my head and say, you know what? I can't say that I'm crazy about it, but I would have liked to see it, though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I would, especially when they have, because the one thing I love about this documentary is that they've got tons of, pre-production drawings and sketches and all kinds of designs for different things that they were going to do. I mean, you were 100% right. Everybody on this project was committed to this project. They weren't treating it as a joke. They were serious about this.
Well, when you watch, because back in time, I remember reading about this in magazines and websites and whatnot back in the day when this was in pre-production. And I remember back then when they were talking about reading all that stuff back at the time, you don't realize how much work they had actually gotten done on this thing.
Yeah. I mean, it's extraordinary. You know what? You don't do that much work for something that you don't care about. Yeah. It's just that simple. You don't. I mean, just the work that they did on the suit, Nicolas Cage, with all the fiber optics and everything like that. You got to do that stuff by hand.
Right.
And that's very painstaking work that you got to take your time with. You don't do that stuff for something nobody's not going to see this thing. You do that type of work for a project that you actually do care about.
Well, something else that was really interesting about it is that because when that stuff first started coming out with the costume test footage and all that, is that everyone assumed that was going to be Superman throughout the whole movie. Then you find out, no, that's just the restoration suit. That's you see that for 5 minutes in the movie. And it really kind of gives you a clue into how much work goes into these movies because they're doing all this work, days, weeks, months even of work on this thing that's just going to be used for 5 minutes in the movie.
And I do recall that was part of the reason. And even Tim Burton, he kind of touches on that because he said, okay, a lot of that stuff that got leaked out to the internet, he said, nobody was ever supposed to see that. That was just for us.
Right.
And like you said, people saw, the pictures of that restoration suit, and they just assumed that was going to be the Superman suit for the whole movie. And of course, the internet lost his mind.
Right.
Kevin Smith has a terrific line in this, one of the best lines I've ever heard, when he said that, okay, when it was announced that Michael Keaton was going to play Batman in the 1989 Batman, he said, even though there was no internet, the internet got pissed off. Yeah. He said, that's how mad people got, and he's absolutely right. People got pissed off. People see one little thing and it never fails to amaze me. And I read stuff, on Facebook and Twitter, how people will see one picture and they will extrapolate an entire conspiracy theory out of this one picture. Well, where do you get all of this from? And basically that's what happened with, this movie when that picture of Nicolas Cage came out and everything. But like I said before, Tim Burton says, he said, now that's why if I'm doing something, he said, I do it in a bunker 3 miles down with one camera. He said, he said, because there's shit that I just do just for me. And he's absolutely right. I'm a firm believer, and people talk about, oh, no, the fans deserve to know everything. Well, no, you don't.
No,
you don't.
You deserve to see the finished product, but you don't need to see every single step of the production up until that. When they show that stuff to you, that's a bonus.
Bingo.
I mean, and I remember when you were talking about this, it reminded me going back to another time Nicolas Cage played a superhero in the run up to Ghost Rider when they were in production on that movie. And they had this photo floating around of Nicolas Cage in a skull mask with this fiery wig or something like that. And everybody flipped out. But you know what? They're just doing tests for colors and that kind of thing to kind of see what works together. People don't understand how much work goes into these movies and how much this stuff is used as placeholders for something that's going to be put in digitally after the fact.
Exactly. The equivalent, okay, it's like if I was to print. Okay. Let's say I took the current work in progress that I'm doing now and I printed that. If I printed my first drafts, people would swear I was insane. They would, because there's all kinds of digressions and there's shit thrown in there. And matter of fact, I cut out a good 50% of my book in the process of writing the second and third draft. But if I print now, movies are the same way. If you were just to be presented with the pre-production stuff and the first draft of the screenplay and everything like that, you say, oh, this shit is crazy. This will never work. But then when you see the finished product, you say, oh, wow, that was a pretty damn good movie, because it's a process.
Yeah.
But we're in this thing now where fans definitely have this entitlement, and this is where we get that thing that you've spoken on so accurately before about these fans demanding that they deserve to see the Zack Snyder Justice League movie, and if they don't get to see it, there will be repercussions. Well, see, this is where you get that type of mentality from fans believing that they deserve to be on every stage of the creative process. And no, you don't. You're not entitled to that. You should. The only thing you're entitled to, like you said, is the finished product.
Yeah.
That you paid your money for. Exactly
right. You're not entitled to download it for free on BitTorrent or whatever. But also something else too. You were talking about that. Like I was also thinking about, because I'm doing drawing work now and starting to get into that. And
very well, I might add.
Thank you. But one of the things that you learn as you start drawing is that if you look at like you look at a pinup that like Jim Lee or John Byrne or someone does this awesome pinup of Batman or Superman or whoever, right? They don't draw that finished version, right? There are building blocks that build up to it. You start off with a stick figure, really.
Yeah.
And you build up, you add more elements to it because you get the structure right, and then you add other stuff. Like that, all that stuff you see in the finished piece, that's just the final layer of it.
Yeah.
It's just like a house, right? You build a house, you got a framework for it, and then you put the walls up, you put the wallpaper, you put all the furnishings on. But if you went to a construction site and you see a house being built, you wouldn't look, oh, that house is a piece of shit.
Thank you. Exactly. Because you can't tell what the house is going to look like just from the framework.
Right. Yeah.
You can't tell. You don't build a house. You build a house from the foundation up. You don't build a roof first.
And on one hand, I do think it's kind of good that we do get to see these types of things where people, because one of the things that really annoys me when these types of pictures come out is that they're always presented without context, right? No one explains to people that this is just a first step in the process, right? Mm-hmm. And people don't really understand how different, how much of an impact it makes, like the way you film something, the type of lighting you use, the type of lens you use, the type of film you're using for it, all this type of stuff. This all is hugely influential, even before you get to post-production stuff with CGI and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I think one of the things, this movie does a really good job of kind of stripping away a lot of that mystique, and it shows you how much work really goes into these movies.
And, like I said earlier, nobody does this type of work on a movie that they don't believe in. And yeah, as wacky as he is, I do believe sincerely that John Peters did believe in this movie on whatever level in John Peters' universe, but he did believe in this movie. And everybody, and everybody else that worked on this, I mean, because at one point they're talking about, where they call up people that they don't think that they're going to get to work on it. And they say, yeah, they come and they're doing pre-production sketches and they're designing creatures and spaceships and everything like that. And I'm saying, wow, because of course it's Superman. Mm-hmm. And Superman has that universal appeal to everybody. I mean, I don't know the first thing about writing a comic book, but if DC Comics called me tomorrow and said, Dirk, we want you to write Superman, yeah, I'd learn how to write a comic book in 20 minutes flat, just to write Superman. So and I know when you hear Nicolas Cage as Superman, your first thought is, but you know what? You watch this documentary and you kind of halfway come to say, well, you know what? Yeah, you know what? I kind of would have liked to see that.
It's because a lot of that, when you think of Nicolas Cage as Superman, like a lot of people, there's the image of him from the costume test where he's got the long hair, but you don't see and they show him in here, these stills later on of Cage with short hair and he's wearing like this like pads. It looks really good. It looks really faithful to the classic costume.
It does. He looks really good. I have to admit, I'm looking at it, but I even liked him with the long hair. I like him with the long hair, but yeah, but they do show him later on where he's got like short hair and everything like that. And I'm looking at him and I'm saying, something? And again, yeah, you know what? I'd have paid money to see this.
Something else
sold it off.
Something else people forget at the time is that in the 90s, Superman had long hair.
Yeah, he had the mullet.
He had the mullet, the super mullet he had after the death of Superman. So yeah, he did have the long hair back then at the time. So it's not that out of the realm of possibility.
Now, one thing that they kept coming back to in this movie, and we even heard it, that a lot of people complained about that in the Brandon Routh Superman movie, whereas that John Peters was apparently obsessed with having Superman hit stuff in this movie. Mm-hmm. That was his thing, And we hear other people say that too. Yeah, well, the fans always, Superman never hits anything. He never, that's the only thing that Superman is supposed to do, is just hit stuff,
Right.
I mean, I kind of understand. Okay, what people are really saying was that they want to see him use his superpowers in other ways rather than, saving people or preventing natural disasters. Mm-hmm. But see, here's the thing. That's what Superman does.
Yes. Yeah.
Superman is the only superhero, as far as I know. He puts on his costume and he doesn't fly around looking for crime to stop. He flies around the world looking for natural disasters to stop. If there's a flood on the other side of the world, he goes to stop that. If there's a famine over here, he flies in food. If there's a tsunami over here, if there's an earthquake, that's what Superman does. His whole thing is not primarily fighting the supervillains. Yeah, he does that. Mm-hmm. But that's not the primary motivation for Superman, which is what I think a lot of people that make a Superman movie, that escapes them.
I think you're absolutely right. Like the whole thing about Superman is he's there to help people. He's there to save people. He's not there to fly through buildings or whatever. He's there to help the other people. That's one of the things that the Richard Donner movie did such a great job of capturing.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, Batman, his thing is stopping crime.
Right.
That's what he does. See, he puts on his costume, he goes out to look for criminals and crime and stuff. That's what he does.
Fighting crime by beating people up.
Right. But that's not what Superman does. He doesn't do that. Oh, yeah, of course. If he's flying back from, stopping a famine in Bangladesh, if he hears that there's a bank robbery going on, he'll fly down, he'll stop it. Mm-hmm. But he's not going to go out of his way to look for bank robberies to stop.
Right.
That's what I'm trying to say. That's not what he does.
And that's what both the Richard Donner movie and also the Superman Returns did to a certain extent as well. They really did a good job of capturing that Superman is out here to save people, right?
Right.
Like he's got that choice he has to make in Superman Returns. Do I go out to stop Lex Luthor, or do I go save the people who are in danger right now in Metropolis? And he goes and he saves the people in Metropolis.
Exactly. Which is the choice that Superman will always make.
Yeah.
It will always be to help the people first. Lex Luthor, listen, he can find Lex Luthor later on. That's not a problem. He can find him anytime he wants him.
Right.
But it's the people that need his help right now.
There's something else that happened in this documentary, which I thought was really interesting. When they're talking to, I think it was Wesley Strick was his name, who was one of the screenwriters on Batman Returns. Mm-hmm. And this kind of shows you the mentality they had, because Kevin Smith even mentioned this. Why don't you go to the comic book guys and ask them? They know how to do Superman. They're doing Superman really well. So why don't you ask them to do it? And they're like, well, no. And this kind of shows you how much Hollywood has changed. The mentality has changed in the years since, where they said, oh no, those are comic book guys. Right? We don't talk to the comic book guys. We talk to the movie guys. And and it's so funny that now you have now you have all this crossover between the comic book and the movie guys, right? So you got Josh Whedon, he finishes Buffy and Angel, and then he goes and he writes X-Men, and then he goes and he directs the Avengers, and then Kevin Smith, he directs a bunch of these movies, and then he ends up he writes Superman movie, and then he goes and he writes Green Arrow and Daredevil, and Jeff Johns, right? Prime example, start off in comic book writing, and then he ends up doing executive producing a lot of these DC movie projects and stuff. So
right.
And it's just really funny how much things have changed since then.
Because like I said, because back then they didn't believe that comic book people could be trusted with movies. They said, they don't know anything about movies.
Well, I think part of that is because they had Frank Miller write RoboCop 2 and 3.
Well, oh boy, that's a whole nother episode right there. But yeah, that's I don't know. There, I think, is a certain a certain arrogance that goes along with movie making that I think is necessary for because listen, let's face it, and even with writing, let's face it, there's a certain amount of arrogance that goes along with what we do because we think that we can write something that's good enough that people will pay money to read.
Right.
So it's the same thing with movie making. They're saying, okay, well, you know what? Yeah, I know how to do this better than anybody else, even though this is a character from the comic books, I know how to make a movie out of it, better than the people so it's that certain type of arrogance and we see with John Peters because he's got a certain arrogance about it because he gets Superman. Well, Superman, he's from the streets. When I heard that in the movie, I bust out laughing. I said, man, he so does not get this. But he's convinced. He's convinced in his mind. He knows Superman.
Well, see, and kind of going along with what you're saying is you need that kind of arrogance, not only to push people to get stuff done, right? Because if you're someone who's not fully committed, who's not strong enough to back up that conviction, you're not going to be able to push anyone else to go along with you. And you look at John Peters and you imagine him like in a negotiating room over the budget for the movie or pitching a project or something. Like that's a guy who's going to sell you on whatever he wants to make. Yeah. And if you don't write him the check, you might be afraid he's going to throw you out the window.
Well, that's what he says at one point that, that the guy that, was going to pull the plug on it. And he told the guy he was going to throw him out the window. And looking at John Peters, and from the stories I've heard about him too, I have no doubt that he was fully capable of throwing somebody out the window if he felt like it. But, and this, watching this documentary is a prime example of something that I say quite frequently in that when people talk about, oh, that was a terrible movie and that was a bad. I say, yeah, but something, you got to look at it this way. Considering how many people are involved in the making of a movie, actually, it's a miracle we get as many good movies as we do.
Yeah.
Because everybody, everybody that's in this movie, we see they have their own idea what Superman is and what he should be and what he should look like and do that. But they're all still coming together to try to make a cohesive vision. To me, that's one of the most amazing things about movie making is that we get as many good movies as we do with so many people with all these diverse thoughts and ideas and concepts. And it's the director that has to pull all of this together and say, okay, this is how we're going to do it.
Yeah.
And these people go along with it and they say, okay, yeah, cool.
It really is. You're right. And it's so interesting to like just kind of like peel through the layers and like get this look behind the scenes at just how much stuff goes into it. And you look at some of these designs and on the one hand, when you hear they're hiring people who don't know Superman, who've never had any exposure to Superman. And on the one hand, you think, well, that's stupid. Why would they do that? But then you look at some of these production designs and some of these ideas some of these artists have, and you're like, well, you know what? I kind of see why they wanted to go with someone who's not so influenced by the comics, because there's some really unique takes on that. And if nothing else, this movie would have been amazing to watch visually, just from a visual perspective.
Visually, it would have been eye-popping. And yeah, you make an excellent point right there because sometimes, you hire somebody from the comic books and they just may be too close to the material and they can't see it any other way except this way. And you need somebody like remember we were talking a couple of weeks ago and I was saying that, well, instead of the word adaptation, we should start saying translation. Right. We're talking about taking something from one medium to another. Okay, when you take Superman from the comic books and translate him into visual medium, that's a different animal altogether. Right. With certain needs that have to be served and met that you can't do in comic book and vice versa. Because there's certain things you can do in the comic book with Superman you can't do in live action. Yeah. And that's okay. That's okay. Even they had Superman on radio. Now, Superman really shouldn't work on radio, but your imagination fills in the gap. Your mind provides the special effects. So now you're seeing the best Superman that you've ever seen because you'll provide. And all of those three mediums, comic book, radio, and movies, are all valid interpretations of Superman. There is no one right way to do Superman. There can't be. I mean, the character's lasted for 80 years because he's changed. So that's what I'm saying. Looking at this documentary, Tim Burton and Nicolas Cage, it would have been a weird shit movie. It would have been batshit insane. But you know what? I got the feeling that it would have been a lot of fun to see. If nothing else, and visually, like you said, visually it would have been a knockout. Because I was going back and I was rewinding and I was freezing the frame of some of the production designs and, the artwork and everything like that. And some of that stuff would have looked fantastic on film. Absolutely, yeah.
And it's especially some of the stuff that really stands out in my mind, like the whole idea of, using because John Peters was so obsessed with the spider idea. He's using the idea of having Brainiac's body just be like these giant spider legs under a cloak. Like that's
yeah.
That would have been freaky and it would have been awesome.
Yeah. And again, I said, what is it with him and spiders?
I don't know.
But that would have been a great visual where he has a cloak and they said it would have been one part where he takes it back and all he is just spider legs up underneath.
Yeah, and you imagine that, especially when they were talking about Christopher Walken playing Brain. You imagine Christopher Walken's head just on this giant robot spider body.
Oh my God, yeah. I would have loved to see that.
Yeah. And
perfect choice for Brainiac, actually, Christopher Walken.
And yeah, it's such a, and it is weird to see Tim Burton and like his take on Superman, and you realize that he was really trying to do it right. Like John Peters, I think he had his idea of Superman and he was so convinced that this is the one, but Tim Burton is a little bit different in that I think like he was trying and figure out Superman.
Okay. Here's the thing about Tim Burton. You look at his earlier movies, right? You look at most of his earlier movies and what it's actually about is about, and I didn't figure this out until I saw Edward Scissorhands. And Edward Scissorhands is a metaphor for creativity because the one thing that he has, most creative thing about him that he has is those razor blades that he uses, but it separates him from other people because he can't touch them because he'll cut them to death. Right. And if you look back at most of Tim Burton stuff, that's what, I mean, Batman and stuff like that, is whatever people are best at, that's what separates them from humanity.
Yeah.
That's kind of a hard concept to apply to Superman because he puts what he's best at in the service of humanity. So Tim Burton is having a hard time figuring out Superman because his thing is all about characters. His characters are on the outside. And Superman, and I know they say that a lot in this movie. Well, yeah, Superman's an outsider. Well, no, he's not. He was raised on a Kansas farm. He's not an outsider. Superman doesn't feel like an outsider. He feels like he's a part of society, because he was raised as part of society.
I think there is a way to do Superman that you are able to get that outsider feel with him and still have him be part of society. So I think that really comes in the Clark Kent identity, right? Well, because Clark Kent has to purposely put on an act, right? He can't really be himself in that way because he has to put on this act to throw people off the scent that he's Superman.
Right. Because I remember reading somewhere, or you might even said it to me, I don't know, where somebody said, Superman is actually 3 personalities. He's not 2.
Right.
There's Superman, the superhero. There's the real Clark Kent, who was raised up on the farm boy. And then there's the Clark Kent in Metropolis, the one who's pretending.
Right.
But that's not really Clark Kent. Like when he goes back to visit his, his folks, Mom and Pa Kent, he doesn't wear the glasses.
Right. Yeah.
There's no reason for him to do that because, now he's really being himself. That's the real Clark Kent. Yeah. And he's got the overalls on and he's carrying the tractor and stuff like that. That's who he really is. But even the Clark Kent that's in Metropolis, that's another identity.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the one he's manufactured to live among human beings.
I think I was the one who did say that to you because that's something I've always felt. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't really grasp about Superman. And I think you'd get a lot better stories about him if you had people more, look closer at that kind of dichotomy.
Right. Yeah, because to me, I've always thought Batman was more of an outsider than Superman.
Oh yeah, definitely.
You know?
Like it always kind of surprised me when people say that Superman's unrelatable, but Batman is because Batman has no powers. But but Superman, I think, is a much more relatable character because he's got to put on a mask to kind of hide who he is. He's got to try to put on airs around other people to kind of fit in. He's got to he grew up in a middle class household basically. He lives in society. He lives in an apartment in New York City. He's not a billionaire who grew up without parents living in the outskirts of town and then and didn't go to college, but ended up traveling the world to learn martial arts. Like, I don't know. I don't understand how people think that's more relatable just because he doesn't have superpowers.
Yeah. And to put it on to put it on a personal note, see, I can relate to Superman more because as Clark Kent, he's got to, pretend he's somebody else to, deal with, society and everything like that. Okay. Growing up, when I went into certain situations involving white people, there was a certain way I had to act. There was a certain way I had to speak. There was a certain way I had to act. I couldn't be myself. I had to act in a certain way because I knew that I was dealing with certain types of people. Right. And Black kids in the era that I grew up in, we were taught this very early on in life that, okay, well, when you go out into white society, this is how you act. This is what you do and this is what you say. If you want to come back home, this is what you better do. So that's why I think I relate to Superman more because he kind of does the same thing. He says, when I go among humans, I have to act this way. I have to talk this way. I have to be this way so they don't suspect who I really am.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So, So to me, that's why Superman always worked for. And you're absolutely right. I got Superman more than I like Batman. But yeah, Batman is a privileged white kid, who got pissed off because his parents was killed. And he just said, well, I'm going to take revenge on the whole world because my parents got killed. Yeah. Whereas Superman, he says, you know what? I want to do good for people. I want to help people. Even the bad people, they deserve to be helped too. It's a very positive message that Superman has. And I don't understand why people don't embrace it, but I hear that, well, he's a Boy Scout. He's unrealistic. And he's this, that. I said, really? You can't relate to that worldview that, well, I just want to help people and do good?
Well, I mean, that's the entire, rescue and medical professions, right? I mean, yeah, you could say, well, people become doctors because they want to make, but that's like you talk to most people who become doctors. Most of them don't do it because they want to make money. Most of them do it because they sincerely want to help people.
Exactly. I mean, yeah, the money is good and they're not going to lie to you about it, but yeah, that's why most of nurses, every nurse I've ever talked to, they got into it for one reason. They got into it because they wanted to help people. Yeah. It's just that simple. And they go through a lot of time, expense, and sacrifice to do these jobs. That's why when they said that in this country, when they said, okay, well, the first ones that's going to get, the vaccine is the medical workers. I said, well, duh. Yeah. Of course. They should be the first ones to get it. The doctors and the nurses. Who's going to take care of us if they're not well? Yeah. Take care of them first. Yeah, definitely. But but Superman, yeah, he's kind of like the ultimate doctor for the world, Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And well, just like, people who go into like these search and rescue, right? I mean, search and rescue, it does. I don't know how much it pays. Probably pays okay, but I'm guessing doesn't pay as well as like a doctor. Certainly doesn't pay as well as like a stockbroker or something like that. But, people do it because they do want to help people.
Okay. Let me tell you something. One thing that pisses me off? One thing pisses me off whenever they put out a warning. Okay, well, there's going to be a flood, so you have to evacuate this area, and we need you to evacuate now. You're always going to have that one fly. You're always going to have that one bee that would rather sting than make honey. He's not leaving his house. He was born in this house. He's going to die in this house. Okay, flood comes. He's running to the roof. Now he's calling for help. one brave soul goes out there and gets him. And you know something? God bless that one brave soul, because if you left it up to me, your ass would drown. But no. And I mean, you have people at the risk of their own life, they will do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you know something? That's like Superman. That's, to me, that's what Superman does.
Yeah.
So when they call these people heroes, and because they risk their own lives, or people that go get stuck up on a mountain and somebody goes and rescues them, God bless them. Because if you left it up to me, next to Ken, okay, I'll tell him later. Sorry, that's just me. What can I tell you?
But yeah, but it is so amazing that you get all these people who just, for some reason, they're not able to grasp that idea of like, what do you mean he just wants to help people? And they don't understand. They don't understand it. I don't understand someone who can't grasp that possibility. So whenever someone says like Superman's not realistic in a modern sense, I don't understand it.
And you know what I tell people when they say, well, I don't like Superman because I could be like Batman. Oh, you could? You have a couple of $1 billion and you have 10 years to go study martial arts around the world and learn every scientific, type of discipline. I said, but there is a way you can be like Superman. And they said, really? How can I do that? I said, just do one thing a day for somebody who will never know what you did and have no way of repaying you.
Yeah.
Just do that. And they said, that's all. So that's all you got to do.
Yeah. So any other things that you want to touch on with this documentary?
Only that it again, it's remarkably comprehensive. When you talk about going from A to Z, there was, as a matter of fact, this was the second time I've seen this, because I've seen this before, but I watched it 2.5 times, really. I watched 2.5 times. But there were things that I saw here, either I didn't remember from the first time I saw it, or, I just wasn't paying attention. But there was new stuff in here. I love the fact that they have tons of concept art that you can look at. I mean, this is wonderful just to look at. You can see all the designs of the various suits, Superman suits, of Metropolis, of, Krypton. I love they have a whole section where they go into how they was going to develop Krypton. And at one point, Krypton was going to be like these shifting tectonic plates.
Oh, yeah. That was a really cool idea.
Yeah, connected with like this H.R. Giger-like type of biomechanical stuff and everything. That freaked me out right there. I said, man, I would have loved to see that on screen. And as I said earlier, I love documentaries that we talk to the actual people. You know, let the people sit down with the people and let them tell me what happened, and then I can make up my mind for myself. Like now, okay, when like when you talk about early on when we were talking about Kevin Smith and John Peters and they cut back and forth. Here's the thing. I don't think either one of them are lying. I don't. I just think that and a lot of time has passed by. I think they just remember it differently. There's 1 or 2 times I think John Peters was full of shit, though.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Yeah.
But most of the time, I think he was full of shit about the spiders. When he said, no, I don't remember that. No. I've heard too much from other people that say, yeah, it was John wanted the spiders. But
I did love that when he's doing Kevin Smith is doing he says, after I met with John Peters, Warner Brothers comes to me and they say, they said they like you, he likes you, he wants to move forward with you. Did he mention the spider? He did. He mentioned the spider. He told you. They're like every fucking day with the damn spider. So there's some things,
John Peters is full of shit. But for the most part, I think he's telling the truth. And it's just so much fun hearing their versions of it. I would love to just put the two of them in put the two of them in a room together or on a stage and just give them an hour and a half just to talk about this movie and let them talk about it. That would be comedy gold. I gotta feel it. Comedy gold.
And it's a really good look at just like all the effort that goes into a movie before any cameras start rolling. And just like how much effort they put into the smallest bit of detail. And it really is amazing when you think about it. And, I mean, all this effort into just like for a 5-minute segment, they spend months of work on this suit to make sure it lights the right way and then it works the way they want it to, just for like a 5-minute segment. It's unbelievable. It's really stunning. And, you know, being able to hear these people talk about their craft and their work and seeing all the concept designs, and it really gives you a better sense of just how much effort. So whenever people talk about, you know, bad about superhero movies and just, you know, I look at something like this and just like all the effort they're putting into this, all the work they're doing, all the creative energy. And it's just like, you know what? I don't see how you can say that these movies shouldn't exist. Like, you know, all these people are, you know, doing this amazing work.
Yeah. Yeah. Incredible work. I think of this. I think of this. And I think of another documentary I saw a couple of months ago. It was on Amazon Prime that went into the pre-production work for Dune, the Jodorowsky.
Oh, I've heard about this one. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, man. You got to see that. This is like the best movie that was never made.
Mm-hmm.
Seriously. And what's even more fascinating is that when you see how many other movies, such as Flash Gordon and Star Wars, actually cannibalize stuff from, you know, that movie.
Oh, okay.
And they go into a whole section where it's like just about every science fiction movie that came after that, you know, you had these people that was cherry picking pieces from because Jodorowsky has like this huge, massive book of all of the pre-production stuff and storyboards and everything like that. And all directors, you know, were coming in, they were looking in this book. And then they would go off and make their own movie, and Jodorowsky would say, "Wait a minute, I know that spaceship design that came from, you know, Dune, you know," and it's amazing. So yeah,
I'm gonna have to check that out because I saw that on Amazon Prime.
Yeah, that's where I saw it. Like I said, so maybe about 2 months ago. Mm-hmm. Blew me away. Great documentary, just as good as this one.
Okay, I'll have to. I think you got me something I got to watch today then.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so any final thoughts about Death of Superman Lives?
Only that if you have not seen this movie, I strongly urge you. I don't know where you're going to find it at.
Well, actually, so I did some searching, and I'll put this link on the website, but it's The Death of Superman Lives, What Happened.vhx.tv, and they've got a whole bunch of different purchase options. Like you could rent it, you could just rent the movie itself for like $2. But they've also got like, you know, a $30 super pack that has like over 8 hours of extra content. And it's got like extended interviews with like John Peters and Lorenzo Di Bonaventura. They have the premiere with Kevin Smith and a Q&A afterwards. You know, comic artists, writers, and fans talk Superman. Like, you know, I think I might actually have to buy this set because there's a lot of stuff that looks really interesting in it.
Okay.
But yeah, it's a great documentary, and it was, you know, it was partly crowdfunded too.
Yeah. If you watch it, you will see at the end, and apparently they list everybody that contributed to this movie, and it's like about like it's a good 2 or 3 minutes of names that are just scrolling by, people that contribute to the Kickstarter fund for it. So yeah, I mean, you know, it gives hope for people that want to do you know, any movies of this type or any movies at all, really, because a lot of movies you have now, even Spike Lee, he financed one of his movies. You know, I think it was The Sweet Blood of Jesus. I'm not sure. I have to look it up, but I believe that that was funded by Kickstarter.
Well, also, the Veronica Mars movie too. That was also partly by Kickstarter as well, I think.
Oh, it was. Oh, yeah.
Okay. So, so check it out. You can find it. We'll put that link on the website. You can find that at superherocinephiles.com. And yeah, so that does it for our conversation about The Death of Superman Lives, which means this was my pick. That means next we're going to go with you. So what should we talk about next time?
Well, I was thinking about it. And I thought of, well, what could I do something nice for Perry for Christmas? So what I did was that I went back over all of the episodes that we've done, and we've done quite a few. Mm-hmm. And I noticed something. I noticed that around this time last year, we had spoken about Deadpool.
Yes.
But we have not yet talked about Deadpool 2.
Oh, okay.
So for you, for your Christmas present, I propose that next time we get together, we do indeed talk about Deadpool 2.
Okay, awesome. Now, about Deadpool 2, there's actually two versions of it. So I want you to try to see if you can find I think it's called the Super Duper Cut.
Okay.
Yeah, it's called Deadpool 2, the Super Duper Cut. Because I think that's actually it's a longer version, and I think that's actually a better version of the movie.
Okay. I'm sure I can find it on Amazon Prime or, somewhere else. I'll find it. Don't worry about it.
Okay, cool. All right. So I'm excited about this. Yeah. So join us next week. We'll talk about Deadpool 2, the Super Duper Cut. And yeah, that does it for us for now. Head on over to Facebook, Superhero Cinephiles. Join our Facebook group. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Super Cinema Pod. And the website is superherocinephiles.com. For those of you who are listening on the podcast feed, we're on YouTube as well. You can find the link for that also at superherocinephiles.com. You can, watch our faces as we talk about this if you don't want to just hear us. And if you're afraid to look at our faces, then you can just listen to the podcast feed. So you have both options. You don't have
trust me, you don't have to look at us if you don't want to.
All right. But that does it for now. Thanks so much for listening, and we will talk to you next week.
Okay. Take care. God bless.
You have been listening to the Superhero Cinephiles podcast. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Super Cinema Pod. Join our Facebook group by searching for Superhero Cinephiles, where you can interact with us and other superhero fans. If you'd like to support the show, you can become a regular supporter at Patreon or make a one-time donation through PayPal, both of which can be found at our website, superherocinephiles.com. If you buy or rent any movies through the Amazon links at our site, it helps support the show. Please be sure to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts.